Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the Season 3 finale of The Umbrella Academy. A great season finale. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. First and foremost, that whole situation with Klaus and Luther. It's like, well, at the very least, they're in the afterlife, but they're together, so that's something. But it took a while before Luther really realized that he was dead. But I thought it was interesting because on that TV, there was a conversations about, like, you know, the explanation, like different points in history and different civilizations having different thoughts about what reality was. What was it, like an ancient civilization believed that our reality was like, our reality is on the back of like 4 flying turtles, which I'm like, isn't that kind of what The Watch, or at least like the books that those are based on? Isn't that the universe they live on? Like, ain't it like a disc on top of the back of a turtle type of thing? Which I thought was kind of interesting. Other beliefs, well, what was it? Some particular age believed that reality is basically a hologram. But Klaus is kind of like, yeah, you're kind of here, bro. And Luther's like, no, Dad's an alien. He's like, no, like, I think we should just call him British. It's like, no, Dad's literally an alien and he killed me. So he wants Klaus to go back, but Klaus is like, no. I mean, I can understand where Klaus is coming from, where it's like, I thought he was saying like, no, because like, well, there's no body to go back to. Like, my body's been completely disintegrated. But I guess it's like, I guess this also answers the question, jumping ahead a little bit. Stan had asked, like, you know, if we chop off your head, would you grow a new one? And Diego was like, no. But he's like, but is that true? And it seems like he's full-blown Deadpool, because Deadpool has, like, the most ridiculous, overpowered healing factor of everyone, I think. I think even the smallest amount of him left could basically reconstitute into a full body. So I think Klaus is like that, it seems like. Because it's like, yeah, his body was literally absorbed by the Kugelblitz, and broken down. He was dead and his body's gone, yet he was able to come back to life. It's because, like, yeah, no matter what... Because he is, as he puts it, the Prince of Darkness, as Luther tried to call him, like the King of Death, that he can kind of break those boundaries between life and death, and because of that, he's able to cross those boundaries, because death is kind of like his playground. I mean, which is interesting, because him and Luther are bouncing between different, I guess, heavens, which is kind of interesting. It's kind of like that supernatural thought of heaven, like everyone has their personal heaven. It's heartbreaking to think about that heaven where it's a bouncing castle. You're like, that seems like that was a kid who died super young. That's their heaven, which is like super depressing to think about. Because Klaus initially wasn't going to do anything, but Luther's like, even if like you are going to go back and help my wife, I'm not going to leave her alone to be there under Dad's rule. We can't trust him. We don't know what he's going to do. So at the same time, everyone goes into oblivion, and it's like, all right, we're here, and obviously there's the whole conversation of don't ring the bell, because if you do, you're going to end up summoning that thing, and that's going to be an issue. So they're all everyone's separated, trying to figure things out. Lila still doesn't want to tell the rest of the family. I mean, even by the end of the episode, the family still doesn't know that Lila's pregnant, that Diego's going to be a dad. I guess at the same time, you also probably wouldn't want to rub that in Allison's face. But Diego was like, no, we could have some good news. Like, but Lila was like, no, shut up and just stuff your face full of sushi. Victor and Five are talking about, yeah, Dad killed them, and Allison is probably most likely a part of this. So it's just like, yeah, once is one thing, twice is a coincidence, 3 times a coincidence. He's like, no, I'm not buying that. I mean, what did the old man wanted us to come here. He got outvoted, and look where we are. We're still here. What did he do before in the original timeline? Oh yeah, killed himself so that we'd all come together. Because what do? We came together for his funeral. The bastard's doing it again, except now instead of killing himself, he's killing our siblings. So, kind of an asshole move. Big time asshole move. But, like, Victor doesn't want to believe that Allison's a part of all this, but you can, and it makes it, well, Allison had no idea he was going to do that to Luther. The whole point was to get them together, so that's why Allison broke down last episode in front of the door, is because she thought, like, oh, it all went up in smokes. I mean, I guess she could have always forced her siblings with her power, but she more so than anything wanted them to choose this. She wanted it to be their choice, because if they come through together because she used her powers, it would have been an issue. Plus, we don't know how many people she can rumor a few people at a time, because we know, like, like during the at the beginning of season 2, during nuclear war and everything, she made those guys' heads explode because she's like, oh, I heard a rumor, I blew your minds, 3 people's heads blew up at once. Because she typically doesn't rumor too many people at a single time, so it's usually one at a time. Or maybe that's just the advancement of her power, but typically, subsequently, since she's always just rumored one person at a time. And maybe the circumstances never really come up for her to have to rumor multiple people. Either way, she just wanted it to be her family's decision, I think. It would have been less fight on the other side of the oblivion if they had all chosen it. You could tell Ben kind of knew what was what to some extent. He didn't know all that Reginald was going to do to get here, but he's like, hey, this is what... Ben, he had told Ben about, like, right, we could do this. He told, because Faye was like, oh, what deal did you make with Dad? Now we find out it was always about getting here. Ben was trying to, that's why he needed to be number 1, so he could get the rest of the sparrows here, and now, that's why he was saying, like, oh, the umbrellas, why, it's like, why Faye was like, oh, we need to kill them, and it's like, no, we still need them, because they needed the numbers. He knew in the long run they were going to need the numbers, so, that, but, you know, his father doesn't give him any recognition. It's like, no, like, Klaus is the one that kind of convinced everyone, and I'm the one that kind of get us here, so, like, none of the thanks goes to you. That's, you know, you kind of did nothing but fail again, so he's too busy working on everything. But going back to Allison, her being there for Sloane, you know, that it's like, right, she got to say goodbye to both Ray and her daughter, but it's like, that didn't matter in the long run. You know, the feelings are too big to really fully express, so... But, Reginald has everyone divide up in teams, but Five is like, no, me and Allison will go together. It's like, yeah, Team Umbrella, Team Sparrows, everything will kind of work out. Diego and Lila are on their own team, and then, you know, obviously Ben's with, Sloane. And so... Five and Victor, more so Five, confronts Allison, but even in the end, she's still denying it, even though, like, Five's like, no, I remember. What deal did you make? And she's like, what, you think I'm responsible for Luther and Klaus? And so Victor chases after her, but the problem is everyone starts getting separated because this place is alive. It's like a giant maze, and it starts... Because it basically puts people in pocket dimensions. Like, even, like, Five had gone back into that room, but when Victor and Allison went by the room, they couldn't see him because he's basically in, a pocketed off dimension version of it. Or at least it just... The doorways separate people because Victor and Allison ended up on 2 sides of the same room. Opposite sides of the same room, but they couldn't see each other from across the hallway from each other. So the place is so interesting in how the divide happens. Diego and Lila, because for the first time, I mean, to be fair, she has been for a while, and that's why she's been acting the way she has. It's because Lila's scared. You know, it's like, right, the whole thing, like, the whole kind of blaming Diego is like, if you had just let the Sunny situation, like, you know, not Sunny, the Stanley situation scare you off, then I wouldn't even have to be in a situation where I had to tell you the truth. Like, who needs to be open about your feelings when you could just manipulate the people you care about? And Diego's like, do you know how fucked up that sounds? It's like, yeah, she learned from her mom, you know? And that's what she's scared. It's like, my mom was a mess and made me into what I am, and I'm kind of cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, and it's like, what if I'm not good? But it's like, you know, you're a good and decent person. He's like, I'm sure of it, so... but to the point he wants to protect her later on, that he ends up locking her in a closet because he's like, right, tell our baby, he or her, that I was a decent person, or at least I tried to be. Sloane and Ben have their back and forth too, which I thought was interesting because it's like, once again, it's like, why do you want Dad's approval so much? He's not a sparrow. He's just our dad. A very shitty one at that, you know, because for him, it's like the sparrows are the kind of most important thing to Ben. It's all he really has. And for Sloane, it's like, the best part of this family is gone now. Like, I lost my husband. Five ends up running into them, and everyone ends up running into the Guardians, because it turns out there's 4 Guardians, because of course it isn't going to just be one. Because I'm pretty sure the last Guardian they go up against, the 4th one, is the one that cut off Diego's fingers. Because there's the one that's kind of got an axe, there's another one that's kind of swinging stuff around, that's almost kind of got like a kunai whip chain thing going on, and then there's one with a samurai sword. So everyone's kind of duking it out. Thought it was kind of shitty of Ben letting Sloane and Five do all the work. Boy got an axe in his hand. We know when he gets an axe in his hand, the boy can get to work. So they're tackling all that. It also makes me, I guess, I wonder, does Ben have an infinite amount of tentacles? Because this isn't the first time his tentacles have been cut. So he must like have an infinite amount, or maybe he does have a set amount, like an octopus. He has 8, but, you know, he only brings out like 4 at a time typically. He doesn't, or maybe, I think in this instance it was like 6, right? At least one of them got cut, but it looks like all of them did. But maybe they're interdimensional, so like maybe they grow back, or maybe they are infinite. Maybe it just takes some time, just like a fingernail can grow back. I don't know if octopuses can grow back their limbs. I mean, there's animals that can, given enough time. I don't know if octopuses are the same way. Allison does admit to Victor about what deal she made, but she's like, at the end of the day, you got to trust me. This is for everyone's sake. Luther and Klaus. I had nothing to do with their deaths because I was trying to make things happen. So her fix was going to be a fix for everybody, is what she was kind of hoping for. So that's why she was willing to make the deal. Yeah, she's getting something out of it, but she is trying to put forth the rest of her family too, because the whole conversation with Victor was like, could we ever get back to where we were before? And she's like, I don't think we can. With just everything that's going down. So Victor and Lila luckily run into each other. They crushed the one. And it's nice that, right, we were opposite sides literally a full season ago at the end of season 2. But now here we are on the same side together, aimed at that Guardian and crushed its chest in. So there's that. With a little help from Sloan knowing exactly where to hit, 5 ended up like taking down his Guardian. The one that I think the one Lila and Victor killed is the one that was either after Diego and her, because they couldn't get rid of that one because, like, right, his knives couldn't get through. Because, well, I'm assuming the rest of them are like that underneath, just like the 4th one ended up being. Klaus ended up, like I said, popping up, and even Reginald being like, oh my god, that's so impressive. But truth be told is, I don't have time with this. My plans are, like, everything's in motion, everything. This is too important to me to get this done. This is the most important thing, and I figured it has to deal with the whole moon situation. They went through the trouble of introducing that last episode. Once again, I wish I remembered, because it was a season 1 thing when we found out about where his world, where he's came from, and all that he lost. His wife might be all that he has, the remains of his world. Because then I think the rest of him and his people, I think, scattered across the universe. And like I said, he said he's seen many worlds die. So his people are probably going from world to world to world to world. And maybe him and his wife are the only ones left of their species. Like, either the rest are still somewhere out there in the universe, or they're the only 2 of their species left. So it is that much more. It's like, not only the love of your life, it's like you guys could potentially maybe repopulate your species. I don't know. But when everyone did get reunited, Klaus filled everyone in. It's like, yep, Dad killed Luther, and yeah, he set this all in motion. They're just like, wow, you were just you were sending us all here to die, you know? And then the final Guardian coach shows up, and he starts laying into everybody. He ended up cutting off 5's arm, which I'm like, okay, here we go. Things playing out that way. Luckily, Klaus was able to bring Luther back from the dead temporarily. If he probably, even at full strength, he probably still wouldn't have been able to do it. He's the master of death, but he can't bring the same principles that applied to him don't apply to the dead. So he can't probably. I was wondering if he could be able to bring Luther back. Reconstitute Luther in some shape or form. If he had Luther's body, but now that Luther doesn't have a body, he can't even drag his soul back to put it in his body. And even if Luther's body was around, would he have been able to do that? Either way, it doesn't matter. But it is nice that Luther showed up in the end and protected his wife. But Klaus is dying, and even if he wasn't dying, he wouldn't have been able to hold on forever. So, well, to be fair, because you also have to think about it, it's like, right, he did the whole thing with Ben. He kept Ben around, but that was more so on him, and making it so that Sloane's able to see him too, that's another thing. So once again, it's just Klaus was in the process of dying, so he couldn't hold on. Just Luther knowing, like, right, I sacrificed so much for you, and this is the price. This is what I get. And he was like, you did something that was important. So it turns out him being on the moon wasn't just for shits and giggles. Yes, like, the reports didn't matter because that's not why he sent Luther to the moon. He sent Luther to the moon to make sure nothing changed so that his wife Abigail would always be okay on the other side of the moon. Luther just was never aware of it. He's like, this is the most important thing in the universe, once again, to you. So he shares a lot of commonality with his kids, especially Allison in this regard. Even Diego and Lila, because of the whole them trying to have a baby thing. Maybe that's also why he recognized it immediately. And maybe because he felt that camaraderie with Diego of like, oh, it's such a shame that time worked out, that this is kind of the worst time for you to try and have a baby. Like, maybe he was in a similar boat. Maybe that's why he immediately recognized that in Diego and Lila. Really quickly, too, I should add this. Because last episode, I think I brought up, is like, yeah, Diego and Lila never went outside. I completely forgot when they came here beforehand, Diego tried, because he stops Five from trying to go outside. He's like, yeah, this place won't let you leave. So that makes me think, like, this must be the only place in that universe. Well, to be fair, it's almost like it's a giant machine, so there is nothing else outside of it. It's just, I guess, to make it comprehensible, it took on the form of the hotel, but maybe that's just, it took on the form of what was on the other side. So once again, maybe it mirrors, once again, very much like that other universe thing in Doctor Who, where it mirrored that cabin, because that cabin was like on the upper side of the mirror into that other universe, they were mirrored to each other. So to help people process, it took on the form of that. So maybe the same thing here. It's like, right, to make it comprehensible, this machine manifests itself as what's on the other side of it. Kind of, once again, a mirror version of it. Because all it is kind of like, right, it's like it's like walking through a mirror and being on the other side. So this is the reflection of that Hotel Obsidian. Also, the bugs come back again. I'm like, I guess we never found out there. I guess other than, it doesn't seem like it's allocated to any of the other Guardians except for this one. And so it's, the bugs keep coming out of it. And I'm like, I don't know if there really was any significance to it, or was it just being like, yeah, the bugs were always just a sign of this thing. I have no idea. I'm actually forgetting who dealt the final blow to that night in the end. I actually don't remember who actually finished it off now in retrospect. Because I know it ended up dead, but I don't remember. Oh, I remember now. Basically, the sigil was on the ground, and everyone had to stand on one, and he made Allison stop, which I was like, that's interesting. Everyone gets on one, the power channels between all of them, and it jolts and ends up killing that thing. But in the process, it's killing all of them too. Kind of very similar to how Victor was doing that to them at the end of season 1. So it was very similar in that regard, kind of sucking the life out of them. But it turns out this is the price to pay. Because the fact, like I said, the fact is he made Allison stop. And it's like, right, because it's like, right, we made a deal, so there only needs to be a certain people on those switches, so on those sigils. So now he's activating the machine, and it's like this way. Prices have to be paid, and the question is Allison willing to pay the price for the rest of her family? And yes, she's going to get Claire back, but are you willing to sacrifice everything? Like, you already know, he killed Luther, he tried to kill Klaus. Well, he didn't try, he did successfully kill Klaus, so are you okay with this? And she tried to use her new power to, like, make him stop, but it didn't work. I guess either he was immune to it, or I guess, would their powers fully work on him, considering, like, they kind of come from him, you know? But maybe it's just like the machine made it impossible for her powers to reach. Either way, she picked up that weapon and sliced half his head off. No one had any commentary on it, but it's like, oh, that doesn't look like the normal inside of a human being to some extent. It's like, oh yeah, further proof of... I was almost thinking she was going to slash his face, and then like the human skin was going to fall off, and you get a good look at his alien face. But no, but it is just kind of like oh wow, killed her dad, so second timeline you died. This time you kind of pushed your kids to kill you, but now it comes to the situation where Allison's willing to use the machine, because I guess it kind of got what it needed. Not in the long run, because the fact is, Allison was able to use the machine, but without, I guess, what she wanted, what she was aiming for, the machine had enough powered up. It was powered up enough that it was able to accomplish that without having to sacrifice the rest of the energy from everyone else in the process. And Victor was like, don't make me do this. And Allison's like, do you trust me? And Victor stopped, because it's like, right, I do want to believe you and trust you. And so Allison does her thing. Hard cut to her repeating when they came to this timeline, but this time Claire is waiting for her. Not, I was like, it's going to be Ray too, isn't it? It's like, yep, she gets everything she wants. And, which is kind of sad too, because that means you're blanking Patrick, her father, out of existence, which is kind of messed up. But to be fair, her and Patrick weren't in a good place. It's not like she loved him. She loved Ray. So she kind of gets everything she wants. So I figured because that's where that was. To be fair, you look at her lips and everything, like she hasn't forgotten everything. This is her immediately after the events of that. So she immediately went to check on Claire. And the rest come out of the elevator being like, yo, what the hell happened? The hotel's not there anymore. Turns out none of them have their powers. But Luther's back and he's got a normal body. So it's like, wait, what's going on here? Klaus is kind of upset because it's like, I was finally immortal and now I'm human and just mortal again. That sucks. Ben obviously wants his powers. You have Luther looking for Sloane, because that's where we start getting that interesting territory, because like, right, the universe has been reset. But so this is technically... This is not even the first timeline anymore. This is timeline C now. So now the question is, what changed? Like, because Sloane and the Sparrow Academies were part of timeline B, but Ben is here. So he got dragged along as well. It kind of doesn't get his happy ending to some extent. I'm sure, well, I guess it also works out for Victor, because now Victor doesn't have to worry about his powers being a consequence in the future. But also Five's arm is back, and it's like, oh, he doesn't have his powers. Which is interesting because we know in the long run he lost his arm and he was going to go back and eventually start the commission. So when he says don't save the world, maybe initially maybe Victor does stop Allison, but in this timeline she didn't, and so everything gets reset. Everything's honky dory. So that timeline that future no longer exists. Or if that's supposed to be suggesting that in the long run, 5 is still going to end up there, because even with everything reset, they're still going to go back to things being what they are. Because truth be told is, there's no way you can reset the universe without there being like, once again, like the fact this Klaus can come back to life with no cosmic consequences, there has to be a balance in this. You can't just reset the universe. Even them trying to like, oh, the universe still found its way to always kind of like get things, and always ended up in an apocalypse, even when they stopped it in 2019. Followed them to 1963, the 1960s. Oh, it's like, oh, and now it followed them, and the grandfather of all apocalypses followed them back to the present. Granted, it's an alternate timeline, so there's no way you can reset the universe without there being issues. But this was, I guess, a get out of jail free card in that regard. But the consequences of this new universe. Yes, Allison got what she wanted. She gave everyone else a fresh start, took away their powers so they get to live normal lives. But the problem is, you have no idea what Reginald is getting out of this, what he already had preset in the machine before Allison made her move. It's like, who knows if he programmed what he wanted in there along with what Allison wanted, what they had already predetermined and worked out in their deal. So, who knows what kind of backdoor thing he put in that even she's not aware of. Because we do see at the end, the Hargrave, he's always been a billionaire, but there's so many buildings with his name on it. I don't think that was a thing before. So showing that in this reality, he's in the tallest building in the city. So it's like, okay, maybe he's kind of like supreme leader, which the last thing you want is your asshole of a dad to have all the power in the world. Seems like he is the most powerful person, and it does seem like he has Abigail back, but that, what does that mean in the long run? What kind of trouble is going to come down the pipeline because of that? Like I said, just because Luther there and the other Bens there, that timeline the Sparrow Ben are there, I would assume Sloane is around too. Maybe the same thing for Fee, Jamie. Like, I think it'd be neat if all the Sparrows were alive. Would they remember? I mean, to be fair, Luther died and he came back and he remembers everything. So would the same thing apply to the other Sparrows? Because I hope it's not a thing of like, oh, Sloane, because she in this universe never became a Sparrow, her memories are reset. Like Luther will remember everything, their time together, and it's like, well, we're married, and it's almost going to be like a 51st dates almost type of thing. But everyone ends up going their separate ways. Luther goes off to look for Sloane, and Klaus chases after him. Lila and Diego go off to live their normal life. 5 leaves, and just Victor leaves too. Well, he wanted to be with Sissy, so do you think Allison made that a possibility for him? Maybe that and brought back Harlan too. Who knows? Who knows how different this reality is? Because their memories are probably reset, so it's like, right, it's that new timeline thing of like, oh, even though this new timeline is new to you, you've technically lived your life here the entire time. So, like, if Victor runs into Sissy's like, oh, God, I'm so happy to see you. Harlan's so happy to see you, too. Maybe, like, Harlan's about the same age, maybe a little bit older than when they met him in the 60s. So, maybe it's something of that regard. Once again, what everyone else's life is like. Maybe, was it Dolores? Maybe Five actually meets a real life Dolores that's kind of his own age, maybe. And they can actually grow old together, like, because she's maybe about a teenager right now herself, just like Five. Just like spitballing a lot of theories in that regard, but it's like, yeah, I don't see this ending well, this being the greatest thing. And it's so ironic because everything was always on Victor. This time around, it's all on Allison. She's the one that made a deal with their father. I mean, it kind of goes on him, but it's also on Allison. But maybe the argument could be, well, because we're back to that again, because what did Five say? Don't make any decisions without us. Well, Allison's the one that kind of made the decision, but Victor kind of did by not doing anything either. So I'm curious. They were too caught up with this new timeline, new reality, and everything to really kind of get too caught up in that. So at the time of me recording it, which this is June 25th when I'm recording this, there is no word about a season 4. To be fair, it's only been basically 3 days since the season dropped, so it usually takes Netflix at least a little bit of time. I think we'll probably be finding out in the next week or two, depending on how well ratings, like how viewership wise it does, because that's kind of what matters the most, how many eyeballs are on this. So hopefully a lot of people are watching this, because I'd love to see where season 4 would go with this. It is interesting, like, I guess you could almost say like the show kind of reboots itself almost every season, but this feels like a soft reboot in a sense. And when you're able to kind of reboot within your own show, but also continue the continuity, it kind of gives you an opportunity to kind of start fresh in certain regards. Obviously, the Hargraves are all carrying over their baggage, probably both Sparrows and Umbrellas. I hope they do continue that going forward, that like this large family, but obviously at the center will always be the Umbrellas. Once again, it's like maybe in this continuity, because so I'm assuming with this reset, he never ended up having children. Maybe that's also a thing to think about. Obviously, their biological mothers never died, so that also means he never got, because they don't have any powers, so he never got the children either. So their moms probably had them potentially biologically. I mean, we don't know how the rules of this are written. We won't know until season 4 really kind of explains the breakdown of all of this. So, I guess Lila and Diego could always end up running into Stanley. Like, he's just going to be older because that was in '89. Begs the question, is the commission back? You'd assume so. They'd probably have a field day with this, but I mean, who knows what was set in motion. Once again, we will never get full explanation to this until season 4, so I do hope we get a 4th season, because I'd love to see where this goes. Because I know for a while the comic stopped, and then it started up again like a couple years later, I want to say. I've not read the comic, so I don't know like when it started, like, because it stopped for a bit and then continued on for after a while. I want to say it might have stopped for like a year or two. I don't know if that was like because they switched production. I don't remember. I just remember reading that on Wikipedia, just like when you look at the dates the series has been going on, and I was like, I remember noticing that. It was like maybe a year or two before it started up again. So maybe they finished it and then it's like, right, let's start the next section of it. Almost maybe, because I don't know how this like compares. I'm probably going to look into it afterwards, how this, like, how the show itself compares to the comic, you know, what's different, what's similar in that regard. But either way, like I said, fingers crossed, hoping for a season 4, because I'd love to see what kind of batshit crazy stuff they'd get up to in a new season, and just what Reginald fully has planned now that he kind of got everything he wanted. But the consequences for that, we'll have to wait and see. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.